always doing Bombay for 100 years.
Those pictures also into the frame.
Hello and welcome to Business Today Television. I am Siddharth Zarabi, and with me today a very special guest, Romal Shetty, the CEO of Deloitte in South Asia. Romal, thank you very much for your time with us today. It's lovely to be here in your wonderful office in the city of Bengaluru, the tech capital of India. And I'm going to start off by asking you to take our viewers through where Deloitte India stands, because for the benefit of those who may not know, you took over this firm and are one of the youngest CEOs and heads in the professional services space, just 8 months back. So how are things for you here?
Thank you, Siddharth, and it's lovely seeing you. Deloitte, of course, in India, just to give a context, Deloitte in India has about 120,000 people, of which about 27 to 28,000 people service the local markets, about 90,000 plus people serve the global markets as such. So nearly 25% of our global workforce of Deloitte is in India. So it's Deloitte India is a very strategic area for Deloitte globally, because we do work for our global clients across global transformation programs based out of India. And as a country, I think this is one of the most exciting times to be in India, and I think as Deloitte, it's for us also a very exciting time because we have significant growth plans. We plan to sort of hire more than 40 to 50,000 people over the next 4 to 5 years. So it's fairly significant in our operations, and also Deloitte in India from a global perspective is, in the past obviously we've done great things overseas and we've sort of implemented those, but now a lot of the innovation, a lot of the transformation is happening out of India, and that is something that is now being taken over globally as well to be replicated. So very exciting time, and to lead this firm and have the privilege of leading this firm is a really God-sent opportunity.
So viewers, Romal has a 4-year stint now, which is extendable by another 4, and I'm going to say all the best for that right away. But one of the key things that I want to take up, and you've given us several points to consider, but at that size of employee base, I'm just wondering, what's the wage bill that Deloitte has every year? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so I mean, Deloitte obviously overall from an India perspective, like I said, there are 2 entities that service globally. So we have a wage bill of about 25,000 crores every year. So it's a fairly large wage bill. But more importantly, like I said, I think is about the impact that we are making to our clients across the world. I think that is the most important thing. That
the reason I asked you this was for viewers to be able to grasp the size of the operation, and at 25,000 crore and obviously growing, because Romal, you spoke about your hiring plans, 50,000 headcount addition in 4 or 5 years. I guess that would make you larger than many state governments. So here's an example of a private sector company which is adding so much value and jobs in the Indian context. Since we're talking about that, and you mentioned jobs, what are the key areas for Deloitte in terms of your India footprint? What's doing well for you in business terms?
We are actually doing well across all of our businesses: audit, tax, risk advisory, financial advisory, consulting. But few key areas that I think where we are sort of focusing on. One is everything to do with artificial intelligence. So we believe that the next round of growth and the next round of transformation is going to come with AI infused into different parts, right? Similarly, in terms of all of our digital and cloud technologies, because today companies are migrating into the cloud, but not from a just pure play cost perspective, but is really in terms of a business model change. That is what is happening with the cloud coming in, and of course digital actually, one of the things that I'm really proud of India is that the India stack that India has built is world class compared to any country in the world. And I think we are also as Deloitte looking at that India stack of how we can change business models for our clients, and not necessarily only in the private sector but also working with the government. So we also work with the government. The other bit is also in terms of cyber. Cyber is a critical area where with digitization becomes more vulnerable and there are more risks. So these are 3 or 4 areas where we are doing a lot of work, but with some of the new sectors coming in, especially semiconductors, space, clearly those are areas where we are also focusing on both in bringing in inbound investments into the country, as well as obviously helping capability build within India as well, because that's the beauty of India. What's happening today is we're working on really high-tech industries, space, semiconductors, but we're also working, for example, in agriculture to see how do you bring agri-tech and therefore improve productivity, improve, for example, in terms of the reach for our farmers, for our artisans. So on both ends of the spectrum, sort of Deloitte is actually helping.
Since you spoke about the India stack, UPI is now being pushed for adoption in some other countries as well. Is there a similar instance that you can relate where stuff that Deloitte India is doing is being exported, so to say, to the global sort of network of your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So both in terms of like the India stack and the UPI is now moving into Africa and some of the other countries. Some of the work that we have done in India, for example, in terms of digital infrastructure, digital public infrastructure, that is now also being taken to some of the other countries as well, South Asian countries as well as African countries. But even some of the developed countries are looking at UPI equivalents, for example, and a lot of the digital payments experience is actually coming from India.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's an important point. Let's get you to speak about your view on India from economic perspective, and also what is working for us, because you work with so many clients here. One of the things is the manufacturing story. In the recent past, we have seen a huge number of sort of companies go down the manufacturing path. There are celebrated examples and there are certain examples which are not so well known. So are we on the cusp of a very significant transformation when it comes to our capacity as a manufacturing destination?
Absolutely. I mean, as I talk to clients across, one of the things is, of course, China, and therefore everybody wants to have, in some sense, a China plus one strategy to ensure that they do sort of move. So as part of that, not necessarily everything is moving to India, but we see significant portions moving to India, especially where scale is required, because no other country in the world outside China can match the scale that India actually has. The second bit is also because of smart manufacturing. Now what's happened is the combination of software, the combination of electronics, and the combination of manufacturing coming closer together, which is a very sweet spot for India. So that ability now to manufacture at scale efficiently, more digitally, in smart factories, I think is also becoming a big element. So we see many companies, Japanese companies, for example, obviously the US, European companies, now really moving manufacturing operations into India. So that is a shift that is definitely happening. The PLI schemes, of course, have helped, but I think overall two things, which is one is we have a domestic consumption, which is always a good thing, and we are not only dependent on an export market. So that actually helps. And the other element that I see is, one of the things that I have as a dream is that within South Asia, within Africa, while of course the global markets are there, you're talking about close to 3 billion people or 3.5 billion people. This is a big market, and some of this will grow over the next 5-10 years. So I think just the trade between this area is itself quite phenomenal.
And that growth will be at a far better pace than the rest of the world. Since we spoke about a couple of the issues, I just want to take up the example of telecom, and I don't know how many of our viewers know that you cut your teeth in some ways when the telecom sector was going through a rapid transformational growth phase in India. you spoke about GCCs and the fact that you have very significant hiring plans. In the IT services space, we are in the midst of a slowdown very clearly, and that is manifesting in various ways, including the most visible part is far lesser hiring. Yet you are going ahead and hiring so much. Explain why that is happening.
So I think one is a pure play IT service to a model where we say that can I make a business transformation really. So I'll give you an example. So for example, we worked with a tire manufacturer, and one of the things was to see that do I sell tire as a capex 50,000, 60,000 rupees, or can I sell it as an OPEX where I can sell it per kilometer? Now, what does that mean, right? I mean, how do you actually do that? You can obviously go to the market and sell something, but how do you do it? With the advent of cloud technologies and IoT, you are now able to track based on the demographics, based on where exactly are you driving, your driving conditions, for example, the time of the day, you can figure out what would make sense. Now, technologically, it is possible to price something. So we are talking about a lot of business model transformations, which we are seeing no dearth of, right? Second is the Indian economy itself. A lot of the system integrators, for example, do a lot of work globally, but we do a lot of work in India as well. Indian companies are growing, and there's a thirst for for real transformation, for real change in the way they deliver to their customers, the experience and the cost. All right. So we are not seeing any letdown in any business model transformation engagements. Digital, for example, AI, for example, these are these are really hot areas. So, in that sense, we don't see any stoppage. So we continue to hire, and even global SIs, which are slowing down a little, it's only a matter of time. It will bounce back because less than 3 to 4% of the world is connected in some way. So we are talking about a massive, and with generative AI coming in and others, I think the opportunities for businesses to change is dramatic. This is the decade of, in some sense, really high-end tech that's going to happen, and this is the decade for India.
Okay. Since you spoke about both the decade for India and generative AI, are Indian companies preparing themselves and making the transformation where AI will deeply influence their businesses and make a fundamental transformation? Is India shaping up to the AI challenge?
Definitely. We see a lot more interest. That's the one area that in every board, there are 2 topics or 3 topics that are always spoken about. Generative AI, ESG on the environment, and cyber. 3 things that really are always talked on most boards. So some of the more progressive companies we are seeing doing a lot more. Some of them are still in the early infancy and journeys, but clearly India Inc. is on the AI journey, and the most progressive ones are clearly much ahead.
In terms of the ability of Indian firms to work on solutions, the general impression is that the development has been led by companies and people in the United States, and we will only be either a consumer or an implementer. Is that correct, or do you see original work also happening in India in this field?
So it is true. I think if you look at innovation, for example, in technology, clearly the Silicon Valley, for example, has been at the forefront. But a lot of it has been done by Indians, right, or South Asians. So it's right. Well, of course, our companies may not have done it, but now we are seeing
it's people of Indian origin.
People of Indian origin. But now we are seeing that focus to say. That's why I said the India stack was completely done by India. GST, and you take digital payments, that is all done by Indians, and these are fabulous innovations. So I don't see a reason why you will not see an Indian company come up with something new. As of now, it is true that a lot of the AI work has been done there, but lots of Indian companies are sort of now building or trying to build large language models and things like that.
Okay. What is Deloitte doing in this space to perhaps better serve its clients?
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is Deloitte has built a AI center of excellence. So there are about 3 or 4 centers of excellence across the world, and India is one of the centers of excellence where what we are doing really is trying to work on prototypes to say what are prototypes, what are the biggest problems that that a corporation or a government may be facing, building a prototype and then saying how do we scale it up. So, the prototype development for some of the biggest problems are actually happening in India by engineers. We've also now done a lot of partnerships with academia, right, to bringing academia as well into us, bringing in startups as well. So, what we are doing is, so that we've moved away from the fact that as Deloitte we think we can solve every problem in the world, or we think we can do some impact, is now to bring in a little bit more of an ecosystem, right, from students to startups to academia, all coming in together to really, and our alliance partners. So, we work with the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world, we work with SAP, Oracle, AWS. So, all of them coming together to solve some of these problems. So, we've created experience centers where people can actually, or we call it as the garage, where people can come together and solve a problem.
As an industry leader, what's your view on two aspects? One, the fear of job losses, and the other for regulating AI. The Indian government has also sort of spoken about in general terms, but what's your view as an industry leader?
So, traditional jobs done in a particular way will be lost. It is a fact, which are routine jobs will be lost. But AI, honestly,
what sectors? Sorry to interrupt you. What sectors would be impacted the most?
Services. Typically, a lot of the services which can be done, which is repetitive, can actually be done by AI. Some part of manufacturing also, a lot of that can be standardized. But in any technological revolution that has happened in the past, all right, it is only jobs that have increased. Actually, jobs have not actually decreased. So, the traditional job will be done, but the augmentation of the human with, and we have a concept called human with AI, that is going to increase. So, you need to have people have some capabilities and skills built in and not let AI on its own. So, that is the first thing. So, I actually believe jobs will go up, just that the same set of jobs, a particular coding for example, that could get eliminated. It will take some time. It is not that simple that this is going to happen overnight. It is moving very fast. The second bit is, as Deloitte, we have a concept called ethical AI. So, AI has to be built with regulations, because that can be extremely dangerous if it is just let on its own. So, the ethical AI keeps looking at all the or responsible AI, looking at what are some of the effects, and we want to look at 3-5 years down the line what could be the impact rather than just the particular solution. So, it has to be regulated, allowing innovation to happen, but regulated, because the consequences of this going wrong can be far widening and far faster.
You have a great insight into telecom regulation. Now, it's not strictly comparable with this, but that time innovation happened, regulation kept along. Here we're not seeing too much, and when we talk to people in government, they say, well, there isn't regulation globally also on AI. So, what is the opportunity for India? Can we aspire as a nation to be an innovator and a leader to force a standard development across the globe?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, with the Data Protection Act as well coming in, because that's important, because ultimately AI needs data. With no data, AI can't do anything else. So, responsibly having that data, sharing that data, I think is a good step that the government has actually brought in. This area will always be where it will move faster than regulation, however you want. But the fact is, if you can create a framework, that's the most important thing. Can you create a framework by which you can sort of monitor and sort of regulate it? I think it's important, and for India to build something like that, absolutely 100% we can do it.
In terms of a business opportunity, are you able to put a number to what AI means for overall Indian companies as a business opportunity to serve global markets as well?
We have a number that we keep telling everyone in terms of our clients, that there are two parts to it. One is AI helping with your customers, helping with your revenue, helping all outward facing, as I call it, that there is a 30 to 35% minimum thing that you can actually, with AI, actually benefit, right? Which is a better reach for your customers, better product design, whatever. And then second, there is a 30% efficiency angle as well. So there is both a 30% efficiency as well as an external angle that we think AI can do. To be honest, nobody still with any authority can actually say what all could be the art of possible. But that is something that we think, and clients are looking at those aspects to say, okay, can I be much more productive? And productivity is on the minds of all CEOs, including Indian CEOs. How do I improve really my productivity, and how do I remove silos? Because we all run large corporations, and this in some sense can be, with digital and AI, can we break some of the silos?
Could AI have helped us win the World Cup? Since you're a cricket buff.
I think data and the analytics and others, I think definitely can help, and I think it is going to happen, whether it is in terms of sports or it is in terms of stem cell or gene therapy being very, very specific. I think AI could definitely help. But on that day, I mean, I just want to say this as well. It's, it hurts to see, but I think India performed like a champion team through the tournament. They did really, really well. Yes, that one day, and we can give some reasons, the pitch and all those other things, but I just think that they performed really like a champion team. And my view is, when I look at what we see in the next 3, 4 years, 5 years, India will dominate. There is no doubt about that. And there has to be, we have to correct a few things, we have to do a few things better. But
you just need common sense for that. You don't even need artificial
intelligence for that. So we will dominate.
But yes, maybe we needed something more that day, and I know it still hurts to talk about it. It hurts me, and Romal is a big cricket fan. I noticed he has autographed bats, which we'll try and show you a glimpse of also in this conversation. Let's also turn to one more aspect, and I want to go back to where we discussed manufacturing. Telecom, for example, handset space, very significant number of exports, but there is a debate. There are some people who say, this is not true manufacturing, it's just assembly. Somebody said, you're just stamping, punching holes into the outer case of a phone. To be a true manufacturing powerhouse, you need to have the entire components being manufactured. Explain that to us. What should be the rational way of looking at that debate? Sentimentally, I'm completely with what is happening, but try and put it in perspective.
So, I guess, one of the things is that, are we building products and are we innovating on our own, or are we assembling, as you said? Today, for example, let's take, you said telecom, you take semiconductors. There are only 5 or 6 countries in the world that have these technologies that are available. Is it possible to sort of build everything in India? It is possible to build everything in India.
But is it worth it?
Is it worth it, and is it in the timelines, right? In the timelines, or can I be part of a very essential element of the ecosystem, where one element of that 6-step semiconductor manufacturing is done out of India? We've got to take those steps rather than saying, okay, in 15 years time, I will build everything. Or even if I take space tech, for example, a lot of the space components also come from outside. But slowly what is happening, and a topic that's very close to us is the MSME also, is now slowly building a lot of the material fabrication and others is coming out of India, right? Not everything. We've got to do a parallel thing, and not a thing saying that, okay, I will build everything only in India. It's got to be parallel. Over a period of time, we will build capabilities and we will build at scale. The important thing is, India can be successful to be frugal when it can build at scale. Otherwise, it's difficult to build at small quantities.
So should the debate really be that if manufacturing and the global economy is about a global supply chain, we should also be looking at all of these efforts from that point, that we are part of the global supply chain, but at what point is case by case, sector by sector. So for example, in semiconductor, it might make sense to be a design powerhouse, which we already are, and Indians fuel the global semiconductor industry and have been doing that for decades, rather than trying to own the entire chain.
And we have to put our bets as a country. There could be 4 or 5 bets where we say that over this time, over the next 10-15 years, we will completely remove any dependency on anybody else and build it. But we've got to be clear, try not to do everything.
Is there any sector where we can sort of have complete ownership apart from the strategic sectors? So let's leave that out. Is that even possible?
It's not possible in today's world.
Okay.
Today's world is such a coupled world that the expertise comes in from different parts of the world, and it's not worthwhile, and it doesn't make sense in a time perspective to do everything on your own.
So do you sort of agree to the China plus one, although there are many people in India who would object to using that term, but in whatever time scale, do you really see us standing up and being an alternative destination?
We can, I mean, if there's one country that is capable, that is the only country that is capable is India, really. I mean, others can do at small levels. And I think it is essential for the world also to have not just China plus one, it could be 3 or 4 hubs where these are created, so that you don't have any dependency on any particular region as such. And I'm saying even from India, so that the dependency goes. It's good for the global economy as well. So India definitely has the potential to be a powerhouse. It'll still take some time, but at least directionally we're okay. We're going okay.
I want to talk a little bit and draw you out on the sectors of tomorrow. 20 years back, the sunrise sectors had TMT. It's still there, pharma. But when we try and look ahead in terms of the sunrise sectors, the big new opportunities, and where you will see massive capacity creation, massive job creation and value addition in India, what would those sectors be?
So some of it is, for example, space. My belief is that one is, of course, doing some of the missions and others, but in space there's a lot of things that you can do. Fusing molecules which you can't do on Earth, you can actually do in space, right? So asteroids, for example, there's already some things which NASA is doing, for example, where just think that all of the energy that is coming in from space, if it can be redirected towards the solar energy, can be redirected towards Earth, right? That means renewables at scale. So space, I think, and India is one of the few countries that is right there. It's not going to happen overnight. It may take 5-10 years, but it's probably going to be one of the biggest sectors, right, in terms of value. And the analysis of that data, right? The analysis today, for example, when you do a road survey, it's a very, very time-consuming process. But when you use satellite imagery over that, it makes it much, much more faster. So you're able to eliminate a lot of time and cost. So space is clearly one area that I do think. The semiconductors, the reason being because every device of yours will have a semiconductor chip in it. And as I said, there's only 4% of the world which is really connected in some sense, right? To take it to the next level, you will have to have this chip. So that's an industry, again, from a value perspective, will be fairly large. Manufacturing, especially in the electrical, because we do a lot of imports of electrical. So if we can start doing a lot more within our country, I think that is going to be a big area. Services will always be for India, right? The next round of evolution will always be a very, very high-end employment generator for the country.
Absolutely, and employment is extremely significant. Romal, I want to turn attention to the audit function. And before I get into that, what's the current revenue mix from your entire Indian business? How much comes from audit, how much comes from tax and consulting? What's the mix in percentage terms? Yeah,
so we have about 14 to 15% that comes in from audit, another 14 to 15, maybe 16, 17% coming in from tax, and the rest is from our advisory businesses. So our advisory businesses are fairly large, right? So that's sort of the mix that is there today.
Okay. Now, on the audit part, we've seen the role of the auditor in India evolve. We've seen certain challenges. We've seen a policy response also. Where does India Inc. Stand today, and where does the role of the auditor stand today? Have we sort of met up to the global standards? Are we there?
So this goes about. You have large professional services firms and you have some of the smaller firms, right? Are all the firms having a global standard, for example? That is going to be difficult because it's a question of evolution and it's evolving. But in terms of accounting standards and everything else, the principles now are largely aligned with international, right? International financial reporting standards, IFRS. So there's not so much of a difference in terms of India, Inc. and global. The audit is a much more scrutinized function. You have strong regulatory bodies as well that are looking at it, and I think regulations are important for the profession, are important for India Inc. because when somebody wants to invest into the country, they need to know that this is governed well, the companies are governed well, they're reporting the right thing. So in that sense, it's for the good, and audit is also becoming a lot more sophisticated with use of technology to get a lot more things, for example, done. And we do see Indian companies focusing on governance. I mean, today we have a lot of world-class Indian companies that have very, very good governance with them, and that I think is essential for India Inc. really to take to the next level. If we can improve the level of governance across, right, whether it's our startups, whether it's our big, large corporations or private companies, that would help.
I'm glad you mentioned startups because the emergence of a large, from a funding perspective, unlisted new age companies is something that we are all proud of. But some of the examples there have also posed challenges both to the audit function and to the necessity for much higher standards of corporate governance. How big an issue is this?
I wouldn't say this is a prevalent where there are two issues, Siddharth, that I think that are very important. First is the business model itself. Is that a great business model, and when do you make money? I think it's an important, forget the governance bit. Is the business model, the current business model of some of the startups, are they ever going to make money, or you're only going to acquire subscribers, customers, whatever you call them? So that's an important thing where people put a lot of money without sort of really seeing 5 years down the line, is this a viable business proposition? And I think a little more diligence needs to be done when we invest into those companies. The second bit, which is not a majority, which is a minority, is where you clearly have governance issues, and it's important that when they're unlisted, right, that you bring in some set of regulations to manage it, and you also have the appropriate amount of the board. The board needs to have the right amount of control, because otherwise, and the challenge here is that you have to allow the entrepreneurs to grow. You can't put so many shackles, but at the same time have the governance to ensure that people's money which is invested doesn't go into a tizzy, and brings India's reputation down as well. So governance should be of the highest standards, and you've got to have the right appropriate board members as well.
Apart from the board, are there any sort of standard related changes that might need to be looked at, considering the massive increase in these kinds of firms?
So one of the things which we always say is the future looking projections. I think that needs to be vetted well, and that needs to be actually put out there. And we need to also say that when you put out a principle, you put out a promise, you put out a statement, how well are you being measured against that, so that you don't make predictions without sort of having appropriate amount of input going into this. So I think that is important. All countries, I mean, for example, the US has had, and we should allow failures to happen. That's the other bit. As a country and an economy, it is okay to fail as long as you've had the right controls, the right governance. It is okay to fail.
Has the IBC made a difference really in that regard?
IBC has made a real change. I think we have seen resolutions happening of a number of companies that were sick or unproductive, now becoming much more productive with being acquired by companies. The only issue is, of course, the delay in resolution. That is taking a lot more time, and also I guess the number of people to facilitate IBC in terms of the judges and everything else, that also needs to, I think, increase the numbers.
But it's led to a cultural change.
Right? It has led to a cultural change, no doubt. It has led to a cultural change, and we lost many assets and sometimes good assets in the past, but now I think that ability to revive that I think has really helped.
Absolutely, and resolution, as is the fundamental principle of the IBC, is the purpose. It's not liquidation. Liquidation is the last alternative, really. Let's come back to the people bit, and through this entire conversation, this bit keeps coming back. 50,000 more people, 120 plus. Must be a big challenge to keep Deloitte India a happy company, really, Romal.
So, that's why I think, that's why I have a Chief Happiness Officer.
Oh, you do, really?
I think...
so, does the Chief Happiness Officer do the role of HR, or is this a separate position?
So, I have a Chief Talent and Experience Officer and a Chief Happiness Officer, two separate things.
And you don't use the word HR?
I don't use the word HR. I use a lot of heart. I don't use HR. But very important in terms of when, there are a few things that are, for me, happiness is defined as, happiness is, physical and mental wellness and health, very important. It is about our diversity. Diversity not just of the gender being very important, but also in terms of neurodiversity, financial strata. So, for example, we have a program called Heartland, where as Deloitte, we go into tier 3, tier 4 cities. So, for example, we're working with Tripura, for example, now to see how we can get the students from Tripura integrated into our workforce, right, and work. Similarly, we have, for example, our housekeeping and security staff. What we are now trying to do is to say whether we can educate their children, we can give an internship in Deloitte, and finally a job in Deloitte as well. So, really sort of looking at that aspect. And the third aspect is really about purpose and a lot of joy. When you have so many people, my personal belief is that innovation will not come from people like me. I think I'm old and and gone. It will come from the youngest of people, and if their energy can be channelized, if they can be happy, they can find joy in what they do, in purpose in what they do, then I think we will unleash real potential. And that is the beauty of our country, that when this youth, really the energy gets channelized, we will see those innovations that we said 50 years back maybe we were all completely dependent on the West will actually happen. So I do a program called Mics Not Muted, which is where I go across the country. I've met about 7,000-8,000 people where they can ask me any question, and the whole idea is to break the hierarchy, because hierarchies sometimes stifle innovation, and when they ask those questions and when they feel a sense of purpose, right, in what they do, then I think real magic happens.
And that must have made a difference in a consulting firm where the culture is, if I may use the word, a little more formal in this regard.
Yes, I mean we've I think different firms have a much more formal culture, but that's what we've really tried to break those hierarchies, and we are seeing that. And it's not, the happiness is not an esoteric term of okay, just people being happy, but we see that in productivity, we see that in number of leaves taken, we see that in, for example, new product development. So we have a concept called Backbenchers. So Backbenchers are a bunch of 8 to 10 people, very, very smart folks who basically are driving a lot of the people initiatives, the transformation across the firm, and they're driving young kids who are driving with our Chief Talent and Experience Officer. And one of the other things that I've done is I've taken some of the people from the business. So my Chief Talent and Experience Officer was a digital customer person. That's what her background was, and we got her into into talent, because what we felt is if you have to motivate so many people, you need to be able to connect with them.
Where are your people coming from? Because there is, of course, the issue of talent and skill availability, but in a country as large and diverse as India, where do your people come from?
So traditionally our people all came in from the metro cities, all came in from chartered accountancy, rankers, the IITs, the IIMs. That was the only thing which we looked at. But now, for example, they come across, I think we have on last count maybe 16 states where people were coming in from non-traditional backgrounds, not just being chartered accountancy or MBAs, people coming in from various kinds of backgrounds as well. And we see, one of the things, of course, is, when I talk about this Deloitte Heartland and some of the other tier 2, tier 3 cities, the hunger, the passion and the fire in some of these kids is phenomenal. Right, so they may not be as articulate probably as maybe somebody here, but their hunger is incredible, and they're making a difference. They're making an impact.
You also have other countries, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, and Maldives in your ambit. Talk to us a bit more about what you're doing in those 4 geographies.
Yeah. So one of the things is really, first is the integration into South Asia itself. Right, so we are now having a lot of our folks working on projects in these countries. We're also getting them, for example, to sort of move to India and work on large global as well as large Indian projects there. In Sri Lanka, for example, we're basically looking at the economy is reviving. How can we be a catalyst in Sri Lanka's growth, for example? So bringing in that expertise, and one of the big things from India is digital. If we can bring a lot more digital, the infrastructure into the government, into, for example, payments and others, I think that will help Sri Lanka as well. In Mauritius, we're looking at, for example, can Mauritius be a gateway for India and Africa? Right, because they have a lot of the free trade agreements with Africa, and they're at a really nice place because they're bilingual, they understand French and English, they speak French and English. How can we sort of do that?
And there's a large part of Africa which is
francophone as well. Yeah. So really looking at trade pact. So can we build, just hypothetically, can we build, for example, electric vehicles, use Mauritius as a route, right, to export it to Africa, right? Because we may not have all the trade agreements, and we may not have all the risk appetite as well to just directly deal as well. So how does that happen? And Bangladesh is one of the really growing economies. It has got tremendous potential. So clearly that's an area where a lot of the development projects, government projects, for example, for the betterment of people, I think that is an area where we are.
And absolutely, Bangladesh has made massive strides in textiles, just for example. As we wind down this conversation, Romal, I want to try and bring out Romal the person to our viewers. I've known you for long. You were one of the foremost voices on telecom in this country, and you've seen how those networks have been built, and that's what really has allowed Digital India to come up. But how's your personal journey been to the point that you are now at?
Sometimes you're always, like I said, these roles, these positions are really privilege and luck, I would say, more than anything else. You're fortunate to do that. So, in my career, I'm a chartered accountant, but who probably didn't do an audit beyond 6 months. I was doing some work for Ericsson, and all the systems crashed in Ericsson. This is their financial systems crashed. So as a young kid, and their technology team was on an offsite, so nobody could actually sort of, those days there was no remote control and that you could actually do it. So I sort of dabbled a little bit here, switched on, switched off, and brought some systems up. So somebody thought that I was, maybe I was a tech genius, which I wasn't, right? It was just that he thought so. And gave me an opportunity to work in a place called Operation System Risk Management, which is all about ethical hacking, which is all about systems, controls, and other things. Now, and why I'm saying this instance is because that's been my career in the sense of not going through the treaded path. So I went into something which I had no background of. The first 2 days I thought, like, I'm going to give this back and I'm going to come back to audit, because I just didn't understand head or tail. It was Unix, it was C++, Perl scripts and others. But I stuck on, and I have this philosophy of being comfortable while being uncomfortable. And through my career, I did many things. I did forensic investigations. In telecom, I did everything from GSM rollouts to network design, network optimization, marketing, everything else, to leading risk consulting business, to leading the consulting business, to becoming the CEO. So I actually have done all kinds of things, and that bit came a very early part of my life. Was my father was a banker, so every 2 to 3 years we used to get transferred. I used to really hate it because you get into some place and then you have to get into another place. But that ambiguity, to deal with ambiguity, sort of really helped. And not being too phased about ambiguity, or not being too phased about, and maybe when you're not very intelligent, then I think you're okay with taking risks. When you're too intelligent or you're too smart, you do a lot of pros and cons. I probably did that, and it always helped. And and when you, as a person, you become what you become because you have a fabulous set of mentors, you have a fabulous set of peers, and you have a fabulous team. Because nobody can become anything without a really strong ecosystem of this, and especially your team. So I probably was fortunate, lucky to have worked with some really bright people, and they trusted me. They gave the opportunity, and I sort of grabbed it.
Well, that's a good thing. I recently spoke with Puneet Ranjan, who till recently viewers was the global head of Deloitte, someone who's known in business and industry circles across the world, a Haryana boy as he calls himself. And one of the things that he's been working on is trying to stop stubble burning in Punjab and Haryana, which causes massive havoc a couple of times every year. You are also associated with that.
Yes.
Tell us more.
So I was, obviously been lucky to have worked with Puneet both on stubble burning and COVID at the height of COVID in India. But stubble burning was something that we really, we have this thing called, we want to make an impact that matters. And this one has some serious issues. It's of course the air quality index, but it's also about the number of respiratory diseases, the sort of the years lost as well. It's quite significant, and even in terms of from a image across the world as well, it's not a great thing. So what we said is that as Deloitte, we are like an orchestra, right? Trying to bring in different kinds of solutions to solve a problem, and this problem was not going to be solved only by Deloitte. Absolutely. So what we really looked at, and I worked very closely with Puneet, and what we really did is we looked everything from satellite imagery to say when does the field be ready for the harvesting, to basically do a change management with the farmers. The farmers said, this is all nonsense, this thing that you're saying, because of us all the pollution is happening. So doing a lot of change management with them in their language. Right? We had jingles in the radio in Haryanvi. Right? We had a caricature, digital caricature, talking about the ill effects of this. But getting their buy-in was very important. So that was the most important thing, including taking a lot of the panchayat members, Mahila panchayat members, because one of the things we found very interesting was people listened to Mahila panchayat members more than others.
Oh, wow.
They made a real difference. Then basically saying that the problem was that a matchstick 50 paisa was enough to burn all that stubble, but this would take a lot more effort, and the balers would cost 15 to 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs, right? So we said that can we do an Uberization, where we build an Uber model, just an Uber app, where you can rent it because you only use it for 9 to 12 days in a year.
And you don't want it sitting for the rest
You don't want
of
sitting
the year.
there. So between the various India's small and marginal farmers, so between them, they log into the app and then book the Uber in terms of the baler machine, that they use it for 6 to 9 days and pay whatever specific rent. And then we tied up with Indian Oil to say, can we take the stubble and make it ethanol? So we built an entire ecosystem, and today, there was a space imagery of NASA took a space imagery of Haryana and Punjab, and you can clearly see the one way we look at it is the number of fires reduced. So one was Haryana was clear, that image, but our own, and it's a code certified thing as well, where close to 70% of the fires got reduced in Haryana. Whereas if you look at neighboring places, 20 to 30% fires actually increased. So things like that, or so that also something very close was anemia. It's not spoken too much about. India loses, Niti Aayog says that India loses $45 billion in productivity due to anemia. And anemia we're aware that, okay, hemoglobin. The issue is also that it causes long-term damage to your organs. Absolutely. And many people, people believe it's a rural problem, it's actually as much an urban problem. One of the interesting things that when we say as Deloitte, what do we do? And the government's been really trying to ensure that this happens, the Anaemia Mukt campaign actually is very specific, it sort of helps. But they were not able to change. So there, for example, we did a couple of things. One was to understand from the blood samples do some real data analytics to figure out what is happening. I mean, because the normal thing is take an iron supplement, right? You take an iron supplement and then you'll become okay. But we found that there's some other problem. Interestingly, our data analytics indicated worming that was leading to loss of blood, right? So then you're very specific with your intervention. The second is, for example, we started working with the children at home, because the children, interesting, like I told you, the Mahila Panchayat, the mothers listen to the children, and the children would say that. So we created a caricature called Chutki. Now Chutki was there on everybody's mobile phone to say it would also give you nudge. We use nudge technology, which is used in retail. So when you're going around to,
yes, absolutely.
right? We use nudge to ask them to take a hemoglobin, take a iron pill or whatever, and do things for the whole family, where you cook something which is for the whole family, which helps. So some of those things, within 7 weeks, we got people out of what we call as the emergency levels of hemoglobin, out of the emergency levels, right? Normally you don't increase your hemoglobin levels so fast. It's not possible. But it's also because deworming, communication, change management with them, right? So all of those things. So as Deloitte, that is something that we're very passionate about, that are we really solving some issues, or we're just doing some good things? Because we've got to make our country competitive. We've got to bring in FDI. As Deloitte, we believe, because that's important. The purpose is very important, and we try to keep putting this thing of purpose. I mean, again, I'll give you another example. We do work for Uttar Pradesh government, where we're helping them from a 240 billion to 1 trillion economy. So a lot of our young kids, after office hours, want to contribute to that engagement, because they believe that if they can do something there, where Uttar Pradesh, if it increases even 5-10% GDP increase, that will bring a lot of people out of poverty levels.
Absolutely.
So things like that, people are really passionate about it, and as a firm, you want to do those things as well, really, because that will make an impact on India.
Romal, I wish you all the very best for continuing to make impact and leading the transformation of not just Deloitte, but having an impact across the broader Indian economy, an economy that is growing fast and is carrying along the aspirations of 1.4 billion people. Romal Shetty, as always, a pleasure talking to you. With that, it's a wrap on this conversation. I enjoyed it very much, viewers, talking to someone who has such a broad overview and specific sectoral insights into India or Bharat. I hope you have also enjoyed it. If you've been, thank you very much for watching. We'll be back with more. Until then, goodbye.